Good afternoon, everybody. This is Marcia Metzger with Parents on the Level, bringing you another webinar in conjunction with Protect Ohio Children. We come together to get this information to you to use in your local school districts. So, you're seeing right now today's topic is the inclusion intrusion. So, yes, we will be talking about inclusion, which is the third letter in the what Becky Pringle calls a three-letter slur, DEI. So that's what we will be discussing today. But I want you to take note about this little graphic that I've developed for you. I had kind of a creative bone in my uh, toolbox to just bring this to you. I layered up a few graphics, but I want you to take a look over to the left. You see the worldview of the family there in the hands of the family. And then it goes into the school brainwasher. And that's your family worldview, and it comes through on a global scale. You see the global group with diverse perspectives, whatever. They come in, and then you see how there is an illusion that this little group of people defines what we are or what the school is trying to convince everyone of, that is inclusion and that it's a healthy thing and all of that. So we're going to break all of this down. I mean, we're even touching on like the climate. You see the little climate buds here. That's another thing. But you see the result in the hands there on the right side, um, is how the kids are coming out with an ideology that may fit into these categories with the LGBTQ. But certainly these kids want to belong, they want to be included, and they don't want to be labeled as someone that is a bigot or anything like that. So these are the cruel ways that our children are being molded in the public school brainwasher. So let's jump right on in. All right, so setting the tone from the start. Inclusion is not just about skin color. We all know that. I'm pretty sure if you've been following any of my webinars. But anyway, most of us realize the color revolution is here. Okay, the color revolution is here. And the inclusion intrusion, I believe, is the key element. Race, gender identity, sexual orientation, climate belief, vaccination status, political party, religious affiliation, ethnicity, class, any of these things could be used in order to create division using diverse moral topics, as we've discussed in other webinars as well. But let's review a few things because, as I have developed this webinar for you from the angle of inclusion, I want you to be able to utilize this in a way that you can get this message out to people in your community in an effective way. So some of it will be review, but it'll be really a good way of explaining how this happens. So we'll review how rapid the color revolution is progressing and the key elements that feed it. We begin with a review of Becky Pringle's speech while focused on inclusion. So understand too that a color revolution is generally what the CIA really is one of the creators of it, and they use it to topple governments and to install governments that they want to see in our nation and in nations abroad. So that's where that color revolution term pretty much begins, but it's also happening at the local level within the schools. So you need to understand that it's penetrating and it's rapid. All right. Incomplete. They want to stop our students from looking inward to see their own dignity or outward to a world filled with possibility and pride. And he ain't none of this. None of this is known. And it is not by accident. It is all despicably deliberate. The pitting of parents against educators, neighbors against neighbors, communities against themselves.
scapegoating, othering, blaming, instead of fixing the inequitable systems that are baked in the very soil of this nation. And they say blame and ban. Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies are slashing already promised federal support, funneling public dollars into private hands that are already obscenely wealthy, gutting protections for trans students, and dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that lift up every student. I hope you've heard me say the words diversity, equity, inclusion. We cannot allow this administration or anyone else reduce these three sacred values to a simple three-letter slur. Diversity is our uniqueness and our strength. Equity means every student gets what they need when they need it in the way that serves them the best. Inclusion flourishes when all of our students are seen and valued and respected, that they all have access to opportunities and support. Delegates, we cannot fear the future. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Say the words. Say the words. Sam. Say, say it again. Oh, freedom. We're educators, so we know exactly why public education lies at the core of their attacks. Because a free, universal public education that is grounded in teaching critical thinking is a threat to authoritarianism. We know that. Because you see, if they can control what our students learn, they can control what they believe, and then they can use those beliefs to manipulate reality and reason and manifest confusion and cruelty. That's why they want to dismantle and defund and privatize and voucherize public education. That's why they want to demoralize education professionals who have dedicated their lives to teaching and feeding and nurturing and counseling and driving our students every day. That's why.
You might say, Marcia, why do you keep torturing us with this video? But you have to understand, she has said so much just in those few minutes. That is probably the pinnacle of the entire speech. She projected three things. The American schools have sacred values. She flat out called them sacred: diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, the three-letter slur. These are based in secular humanism to bring a revolution from the foundational beliefs of Judeo-Christian values. And this was predicted, remember, in 1963 in the dissent on the school district of Abington Township, Pennsylvania versus Shemp. And the thing about this is that was basically the case struck down mandatory Bible reading and the recitation of the Lord's Prayer daily in the schools, and it piggybacked on another case. So this was like just the slow fade, so to speak. But at the bold words in the bottom of this paragraph, it says that when you a refusal to permit religious exercises thus is seen not as the realization of state neutrality, because we've always thought it's neutral, right? That our education is supposed to be neutral, but rather the establishment of a religion of secularism, or at least as government support of the beliefs of those who think that religious exercises should be conducted only in private. So for years, we've believed the lie that schools were neutral, that there would be no sectarian beliefs strategized or brought to the students or anything like that, that that was off limits. That's what we were led to believe for years, and many of us bought it. The next projection, she exposes the belief that inequity is baked into the soil of our nation. You heard her say that. And it's utterly oppressive to any fill in the blank situation that they can use to divide and conquer us. Thus, the color revolution. And the American School Counselor Association, ASCA, fortifies this in schools as well. Watch this brief video from our friends at Courage is a Habit.
Sessions first, so we're going to frame this work from a critical race lens because we have to acknowledge the systems of oppression in which in which we work as school counselors, but also in which our students are expected to learn. Then we also are going to define anti-racism in school counseling, understanding multi-tier systems of support, and provide more explanation for that. Incorporate an anti-racist lens to data collection and analysis, and incorporate an anti-racist lens to reviewing the systems. And then thinking about how anti-racist practices can be implemented amongst all the tiers. And so we're utilizing like the tenets of critical race theory. The first one is like endemic nature of racism. So understanding that racism is embedded in the system. We think about like education and we think, oh, okay, Brown versus the Board of Education, everything is, together, kids are all learning together. There is no more separate but equal. However, when we take a really critical lens to our education system, our kids are still segregated every single day. We think about advanced placement courses, we think about honor courses, we think about schools and how they get funding. That a lot of the funding for schools come from like property taxes, but like we think about our students, most of them from historically marginalized identities are living in school zones that may not have those high property taxes and may not get those funding. So we have to be able to acknowledge that and understand that. And then we think about like racism as the norm. So acknowledging and understanding that white culture and privilege are in the standards in which other races are measured. Again, when we talk about the identity of the oppressor and the oppressed.
There you go. The oppressor and the oppressed. So this is pretty much a way that they can get into the hearts and minds of our kids and turn them away from any kind of leadership that would bring anything opposed to their message, which that's a lot of common sense to just take into account. So the third projection, admission that those who control schools control beliefs. Sotomayor, our Supreme Court Justice, she's a progressive liberal, reveals in her dissent in Kennedy versus Bremerton that schools control beliefs. I've shared this many times on my webinars. And I'm just going to read it again. Schools exert great coercive power over children who are uniquely susceptible and particularly vulnerable because of their emulation of teachers and peer pressure. Defendants have taken advantage of this susceptibility and vulnerability to willfully impose their own social, political, and psychological, ideology and agenda to shape and control student attitudes, beliefs, and behavior relating to, inter alia, human sexuality, equal rights, and the relationship between a parent and his or her child. Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. That is when Kennedy, the coach, was praying by himself on the 50-yard line, and kids of their own volition joined him after a win on a football field. So that is where all of that came from. But this was her dissent because she was so disgusted that she was overruled. This is where they have, on the progressive left, they're absolutely admitting to the fact that they are controlling the beliefs of children. And we are seeing it because inclusion is flourishing. She said in her speech, diversity is our uniqueness and strength. Equity means every student gets what they need when they need it in the way that serves them the best. Inclusion flourishes when all of our students are seen and valued and respected, that they all have access to opportunities and supports. So you notice that inclusion is discussed, but it's not defined. She doesn't define it. She really doesn't do a good job of defining any of it. She's all up in an emotional rant in order to get her point across as to why that it is so important for them to push this. And it's a tool used to manipulate and bend the will of students. So let's go a little bit further here. Like I said, in inclusion, it is flourishing, just like she said. Our three sacred values, diversity, equity, inclusion, say the words, that part of it too. We must respond and brand Marxists as Marxists. They are promoting a secular humanism, religious viewpoint in the schools. So we're to call out evil when we see it, and this is undeniably evil. Her speech is filled with propaganda, ideological concepts, and undeniable proof that she is leading the charge for radical transformation of our children. And you will see that that is the absolute fact by the time we end this session. The Heritage Organization, they have brought us their. I wanted to share with you two views of inclusion from people that think the way the average American would think in a normal way. The core idea is that where they've pretty much interpreted it for us. Inclusion is seen as code for granting preferential treatment to historically marginalized groups based on race, gender, or other identities, while discriminating against others, particularly white men or those from majority backgrounds. This is perceived as reverse discrimination, where merit and qualifications are sidelined in favor of identity quotas or check boxes. I mean, you just heard the one woman with the American School Counselor Association, and they are in every single state. They take over almost all school counseling agencies throughout the land, and that is where they're coming from. So I'd say Heritage has got it right here. Let's also look at Jordan Peterson. He says inclusion in today's usage means you are tolerated only as long as you subordinate your conscience, your speech, and your judgment to the ideology of the moment. The second you dissent, you discover how inclusive the inclusive supposedly regime really is. And his spoiler is it isn't. And we know it isn't. And the fact that they say they are is a big gaslighting project on the American people. And it's so cruel that it is really propagated against our children. So, the family worldview, let's go through this real quick. Education equals discipleship. Discipleship means being a devoted follower and student of a teacher, which in a Christian context means a lifelong process of following Jesus, learning from his teachings, and living according to his example. So when we look at statistics, we see that America primarily claims to be a Christian nation. All right. We know there are other religions that are also involved in our nation. We know that. And I would say that most all of them say that it is their religion that they want to use to develop the moral attributes of their children. And discipleship means being a devoted follower and student of a teacher. So we need to really drive this point home and educate parents that if they don't want the morals of the school, if they don't want their children coming back as Romans by sending them to Caesar, they need to understand that that is the same thing for today. If they don't want their child to be a Marxist, they need to educate them elsewhere. Full stop. Your family worldview, it might be so sacred to you, the most important thing to you for some, and then for others, theirs may be as simple as believing in two sexes and not genders with gender identity. There's always going to be a binary and there's always a spectrum, and your family worldview is at risk daily in the schools. Inclusion intrudes into a child's thoughts about their family and their belief. We've looked at these intersectionality charts many times, but there it is. I mean, you can just see some of these words. You understand that that is how we're being divided. Morality is of no concern when teaching SOGI, sexual orientation, gender identity, ideology, or profane materials. Students that love God are placed in a double bind. They're loaded down with a decision to whether accept sin and carry it, or whether they're to reject it and be called a bigot or unkind or something of that nature. This is cruel for children. So the takeaway is concerns about ideological indoctrination in public schools. It's widespread, yet most Americans, we understand, are sending their children. They continue to place their children and continue to place their full trust in these institutions with the intellectual and moral formation of their children. So we have to understand that getting this message out to parents is of the most importance today. We have schools right now that are so embedded with these operatives, from the school counselors to people that are really aligned with the teachers unions, as well as just their education came from one of these higher education universities that really promotes this kind of ideology. Schools say that inclusion looks like this by including ages, races, and disabilities. So, up top here is your inclusion illusion. But we know that it goes far beyond this to include SOGI ideologies and other things as well. So, I mean, kids are even furries and cats. And then we're looking at the surrogacy families here. They're saying that's a normal family. All of the normalizations, the man with a beard and the high heels, all of these things, that children are born gay, things of that nature. We've seen all of it. That's the inclusion intrusion. How and why? I want to revisit Ben Carson really quick when he talks about the 45 goals of communists.
25 goals of communism in America and how they plan to fundamentally change our society. It was derived from a book called The Naked Communist by W. Cleon Skousen, who was a CIA agent. And you look at those 45 goals, it was things like gaining control of the public school system and the teacher unions so that you could indoctrinate the kids, gaining control of the news media and Hollywood so that you could manipulate the opinions of people, denigrating the role of the family, integrating the role of the church, getting into the churches and changing the real gospel to the social gospel, making sexual perversion normal, natural, and healthy. How far away from that are we now, do you think? That's one of the reasons that Khrushchev was so confident when he talked to Eisenhower and said that your grandchildren's children will live under our system. We won't have to fight a war because we think we won the Cold War. But they had a much better plan on how to actually change us, and we're falling for it.
We are falling for it. The current communist goals, I have a paraphrased graphic here for you to use. It's also posted on my Facebook page, Parents on the Level. The red denotes all that pertain to the school. There's probably some overlap with some of the other ones that are not bold or in red. You'll notice number 11, it says promote the UN as the hope for mankind, pushing forward for a one world government. That is the main social change that is desired by these global elites. This is why you have companies like SECUS talking about sex ed for social change. These are elements of the color revolution. All of these things come together. And this is why inclusion is used to guilt children to think that they're being nice by opening their mind wide open with no level of discernment on their own. They want to allow AI to discern all of these things for them and measure them, as we've talked about as well. Propaganda, the normalized fruit of political correctness and tolerance. That's basically what it is, and that's basically how they're using this. And two, remember how Kamala used to talk about bringing in the what can be, unburdened by the what has been, using resistance. This is why inclusion is used in the schools. It is their absolute crown jewel. Watch this one too.
That circle that we mentioned earlier, anti-racism starts with us. Dr. Damien Sweeney, one of the authors, is here. So with that, it really looks at how are we What are we doing to take care of ourselves in this process? Because it's exhausting and it's draining, right? Raise your hands. Resistance. Changing systems work is draining and it takes time and energy. So what are we doing to team with other people in that process to keep our energy up? How are we being aware of ourselves? And then how are we able, this whole concept of working smarter, not harder, that politics. Like I love work by Dr. Rebecca Pianta, Dr. Caroline Lopez Perry. They are brilliant. They're out of California. They are brilliant talking about politics. How can we influence the system? So politics, being savvy, like how are decisions made, who makes decisions, and how to navigate that system. Dr. Natalie Aramanasinga says school counselors are the best master manipulators. And the best way, right? How do we look at systems and how can we maneuver them and change them? And that helps over the work with resistance. So it's like,
When Courage is a Habit went undercover to Austin, Texas in 2022 and got these videos, they are invaluable to us to be able to help parents understand just how bad this is. They are the ones that get into the kids' hearts and minds when the interventions come their way through a lot of this AI surveillance. Uh, and the propaganda, a lot of the kids don't understand even what propaganda is and that something's not even true when it's promoted to them. And SEL integrates these intersections into all subjects. There's no opt out. You cannot opt out of it. Surveillance softwares measure the competencies and analytics in real time. Every day is a survey. Remember, I've talked about that a lot. Every day is a survey in the American school system. And these real time surveys prompt interventions with mental health counselors. And then also, peer pressure is another way. They do group work together. We've talked about that. Last month, we talked a lot about that. So there's no opt out. All right. Go back on the parentsonthelevel.com webinar page. Assessments, future ready students, AI, the hive mind behind the curtain, this video right here. It talks about all of this, data driven schools using surveillance. These are also in the two books that we have available for you that are free of charge, and they're under the Parent Navigator on parentsonthelevel.com. All of this information is there for you. But this particular video, AI, the hive mind behind the curtain, folks, the hive mind behind the curtain are these global elites, are the teacher unions, which are in bed with them. We know that they are involved in the UN. They're involved in bringing these kind of goals and directives to our students. Going to this particular video, if you've never watched this one, or even if you did watch it, once before, go back and refresh yourself and look at the videos that I have within it that talks about the surveillance systems that are used in order to make inclusion work. And we're going to take a couple of pictures here. I just want you to see all of these different frameworks are being used in the Securely Discern AI management portal. Folks, this is not kids learning about AI. This is about AI managing every heartbeat that your kid experiences in a school. This is dystopian, and it's unbelievable that we're even doing this. And more frameworks, it says at the bottom, more frameworks are coming along soon. So we can sit here and study every framework that they put forward until our eyes burn out. We just have to understand that these people are not trustworthy with the hearts and minds of children. And that is where I am today. There's no way that I can access every single company used by these schools and every single framework. That would be unhealthy for you to even learn about, much less for me to research. It's going on and on and on. I mean, when they look at and they base their intervention work based on what these kids search for on social media and on what they search for just on internet searches on Google or whatever. And then you've got a counselor that's going to talk to your kid about this instead of having a counselor like it used to be. If your kid was caught doing something like this, they would call you and allow you to handle it. No, this counselor, from their point of view, is going to review this and maybe say, well, if this is something that you like to look at or whatever, I really would like to understand more about you. And who knows what kind of a conversation could come out of this about sexuality. There's so many ways that this could be used. And then they can just drill down to each kid and look over here. So say they pull up your child's email and they go into or your their code and they go into review everything and they can download it and share it with a team about what they think their cultural competence is. And based on what values? Do you even know, parents? And is this just strictly based on what they access on the internet? These things are questions we need to find out the answers to. So when you look at cultural competence versus cultural incompetence, if your child follows the tenets of their religious beliefs with biblical Christianity, most likely that would be cultural incompetence, right? So which one do you think has mastered inclusion? Yeah, that's where we're going with this. These are constantly done through group work, through lessons, through videos, however they can to get your child to come alongside. They use the Castle 5 competencies. We've discussed that. If you've not seen the Castle series, go back and watch it. That will teach you all about that. We also have just how many of you seen this on this particular meme has been all over social media. I've seen it on X, I've seen it in Facebook and Instagram. How was school? Have you most probably all of you have seen it. This is the thing. I think this really just illustrates exactly what I'm talking about. Inclusion is the knee bender. It is the knee bender. It is the thing that is going to cause your kid to bend the knee to this kind of to these kinds of topics and to say, "Oh, what's the big deal? Everybody else is doing it." This is I just want to fit in. I just want peace. And if you think your kid is going to come home and tell you about it so you can go down there and rant and embarrass them is the way that most kids are going to feel about that. Um, Peer work groups function, like I said, like modern day struggle sessions and inclusion language. They're using it to teach sex ed instead of saying a boy, a person with a penis, instead of saying woman, a person who can get pregnant. Words like that, trying to normalize that, restructuring the attitudes and behaviors of kids. These are tests that were done by Nazi Germany. These were things that were done by Kinsey. He called it the SARS method, sexual attitude restructuring, all of that. That's what's taking place with inclusion. Castle, when people started really noticing the social contagion of transgenderism, they put out a report and a slide presentation for teachers and administrators to use to defend them. So they know that parents are uncovering and discovering more, so that's why they developed it. That's where I got these slides. And they made us think, they lied to everyone, saying that our kids are in a mental health crises. They have to have these things in order to function. But then we started breaking it down and understanding that they were introducing these diverse moral concepts in order to transform the student. Again, go to the Castle series for further, more in depth information about that. Think about, we talked about this last month as well. Think about how the knee bends when you are forced to show what political party that you align with. When you think of how much information comes out against Trump on social media, and you think about the students there, they're having to out themselves as to what they believe and what they align with, and what their parents align with. Peer group work, this is the kind of thing that bends the knee. This is an example of inclusion. This is an example of it because people want to be included with the big group, which you see is the Democrat Party over here, and the fiscally liberal. Just open up the coffers and let the money flow out. That's pretty much the whole focus on this particular message. 21st century skills, the same thing. But the thing that's very interesting about them, last month we covered this pretty good, is that they're going to go around this circle here And then they're going to create the transformation. They're creating more leaders to put back in here and to spread this even more. That is the inclusion public school brainwasher in every one of these frameworks. It just goes around and around. Folks, if you don't think that it's involved in everything, this is the ACT. And they delivered the assessment for the moral education program to students in the UAE, meaning they had a moral competency test developed for all of their students back in 2018. This now, one thing about this, Islam is it's a culture where it is a heteronymous culture, meaning that they have like an imam that is the dictator, okay? This does not belong in an autonomous society. We self-govern. This, for them to have this developed and to admit it, and for ACT to have done it, this is what our companies here are willing to do to our students as well. So inclusion is going to normalize, being surveilled is going to normalize being watched. This is not healthy for our nation, for our kids, or anything. Securely was developed by these two particular people here. Before I thought it was they were Muslim names. No, they are Indian. They're of Indian descent, but there are many foreign-born influences in American schools with completely different belief systems. We know there's a lot of mindfulness that is being inserted in the SEL programs. I know one of my friends did a deep dive on that. And I just can't believe that we would just open our kids to just any kind of a belief system. There's a lot more to this than meets the eye, and I think it deserves a deep dive to look into who is behind each and every company. So I think that's something that we need to look into as a group as well. Highly subjective methods are also on the table, of course, which we pretty much just covered several of those. But as we look at the brainwasher, we've got all of this going on. What are the results and how is this coming about? What are they using in social media to add to what's happening in the public school brainwasher? I mean, what appears to be a woman there is a male, and then the baby bump on the male. Folks, this is inclusion. This is what inclusion brings. An absolutely abnormal um, depiction of society. And especially when you look at this description up top, a trans woman and a trans man building a family their way, the what can be way, full of joy and truth and a whole lot of heart. This is what real love and parenthood look like. Folks, that's what our children are seeing. That's what's being introduced. This is why we have to take our kids away from this. This was something that was posted by Diane earlier, a few months ago. Ways we can make sex ed queer and trans inclusive. Body parts and their functions don't have a gender. A penis is not a male, pretty much. That's just crazy. Celebrate differences. Gender sexuality is a spectrum. That is not true. Sexual orientation is different from gender identity. Sex isn't always penetration, penis plus vagina. Teach LGBTQ history. Not all women bleed, and not all who bleed are women. Normalize asking pronouns. Folks, this is the SARS method by Kinsey on steroids. That is what's taking place here. And we absolutely, I'm so glad to see that Planned Parenthood has been set back, but we need to make sure that they are totally extinguished from our schools. This is the lie that is coming towards schools, that students need to be able to be acknowledged. Their experiences need to be acknowledged. They have to have a platform. They have to be visible. That's why the LGBTQ books need to be in the library. That is why all of the I mean, it's endless. If a student cannot see an example of their family in the school, then we're not being inclusive. So if this baby that's born from this picture we just saw, if we don't promote that as normal, is that really where our public schools want to take this? Because that's what this is saying, and I have seen that in other things through Castle documentation. Watch this.
Possible to radically transform our world every day, all day, in every school, in every community, in every state across this nation. As I think about all that is expected of us in this moment, I can hear my father saying, Rebecca, look up at the sky. The sun is still shining, and it will rise again tomorrow. Look up, NEA. You get to be the champions for our students. Look up, NEA. You get to defend our democracy. Look up, NEA. The sun is still shining, and it will rise again tomorrow. You will not be defeated. You will never give up. You will never give in. Every day, you will be centered in the work that we have been called to do together. Every day, we will embrace our resistance as joy. Every day, we will remember who we are. Delegates, lift up your hands. We are the NEA. We are the NEA. We will prevail. Yay! Onward.
I don't know if you can fully hear the background. Sometimes Zoom just cuts the background noise out. The cheering by these teachers at that radical lunatic is just unbelievable. We will embrace our resistance as joy. Folks, that is who's leading the largest union. 3 million teachers all day, every day, across the nation, in every state, in every school, in every class. And that is why we do what we do. That is why we keep over and over again showing you these different graphics. This is how they are transforming the hearts and minds of our children using demonic methods from Alfred Kinsey as well. Taking these kids, developing them as leaders, doing peer counseling, peer work, group circle time, all of that over and over. And those are some of the very techniques also authored by Paulo Freire and Karl Marx, both Marxists, of course, Marxists. And the higher education, University of Illinois, they have put out 9 ways to promote inclusion in the classroom. Let's just look at this real quick. We know that Chicago has a great deal of the people that are involved in Castle. That is where Castle is located, and it is a very liberal city. The 9 ways to promote inclusion in the classroom: pursue diversity and equity education, employ diverse hiring practices, doesn't matter if they're qualified or not, get to know your students, use diverse curricula and perspectives. We see that in the Castle 5 chart. Encourage respectful conversations. Open your mind, kids. This is the real world. That's what they tell them. Promote a positive learning environment. Everything's positive. Don't speak out against things or you'll be a bigot. Okay. Anticipate and navigate sensitive issues. Sensitive issues used to be off limits. It would be ask your parent about that, but not now. Anticipate and navigate. Anticipate and navigate. Mercy. Model inclusive language. Provide alternative means of participation. And then here's the next part. This was another part on there. I highly recommend that you go and read this article. Inclusion examples in the classroom. The name of the article was nine, what was it? 9 powerful ways to promote inclusion in the classroom article, University of Illinois. And it says not the inclusion examples in the classroom include group activities that encourage collaboration among students of diverse backgrounds and abilities. Y'all recall a lot of that, in all these frameworks. Incorporating literature and educational materials that represent various cultures, languages, perspectives, using flexible teaching strategies. You remember the transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and then also you have your culturally responsive and your culturally relevant teaching methods. Yeah, all of that kind of stuff. All these teaching strategies to accommodate different learning styles and preferences, providing accessible resources and accommodations for students with disabilities, implementing inclusive language and communication practices that respect students' identities and backgrounds, addressing sensitive topics like race, gender, social justice, all of those things, because they will make students, I would say most students will self-censor when you start talking about those things if they are in disagreement. Celebrating cultural inclusion in the classroom through cultural holidays and events. So that's a lot of that as well. And so I wanted to see what Google Gemini would say to me when I said Castle was greatly assisted by the University of Illinois. Look at that. Yes, the statement is accurate. Collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning Castle was greatly assisted by the University of Illinois. That's just point blank. So, reminder that acronym, instead of having academic in the middle of it, it was the collaborative to advance social and emotional learning initially. And that it never changed. This has never been about academics. They don't care about academics. The effect on the family, I've shown you this video, but I cannot resist to show this to you once again because this is what inclusion produces.
A student at Chapin High School in my senior year, and I've attended schools in the Chapin cluster since kindergarten. This is the first District 5 board meeting I've attended, though I did watch the public participation portion of the meeting that took place on January 8th. I was inspired to come and speak today by my English teachers. In my high school years, I have come to know most of the teachers in the department and found that they are a brilliant and kind group of people who truly do act in the interest of every student. I hold the utmost respect for them, and they have taught me so much in academics, extracurriculars, and lifelong ethics. I'm incapable of fully understanding the stress and responsibility felt by teachers, parents, and the members of this board. I have no years of experience being an educator. I have no college degree. I'm not a parent. I'm barely even an adult. I'm just a high school student. I'm here to make a point about the dangerous consequences of book banning in public education, but I first want to share some of my background so that you may get an idea of why this is so important to me. I'm fortunate to have both my parents present and involved in my everyday life. They support me, care for me, and I live a comfortable life. I love both of my parents dearly, but tonight I would like to focus on my father and the concomitantly detrimental effect he has had on my life. He's a conservative, a Republican, and a Christian. For as long as I can remember, he has instilled his political and religious values in me. As a child who unquestioningly admired her father, I took him at his word, and his one-sided bigoted beliefs became ingrained in my identity. When the topic of the 2016 presidential election arose at the fourth grade lunch table, I would recite the arguments my father made in favor of Trump. I ignorantly endorsed a man who would have me suffer and even die in the name of political agendas.
All right, so I'm going to cut that off there because I don't want to show the whole thing to save time. But where did she learn all of that? Inclusion. Inclusion would make it, they would say, well, you're by going along with the Christian values, that's mean. The Bible says this, or when you call these people sinful, or when you call what they do sinful when it's the center of who they are, I mean, this is inclusion. This is what's taught in the schools today. So what I've done for you for the rest of this webinar, we're about to wrap up, is I've presented for you some tools for schools to use in leading the charge. And it's really not for schools to use, it's for you to use in schools yourselves. And it's not just to use in schools, it's to use with parents, because if parents go through these exercises before they even go to present at a school, most likely what they are going to say is, I'm not presenting at the school board meeting because I can see right now this has opened my eyes that this is no place I want my child, where I would want them. I would hope that's what would happen. Um, these tools that I'm giving to you, I would hope would prompt parents to really dig in and research for themselves and know for themselves what is happening. So I'm going to just let each one of them, I'm not going to take time to read each one of them, but I'm going to let each one be seen on the screen while I'm wrapping up, because you can come back and stop this on the website later on. Okay. So that's what I'm doing right now, but it's pretty, it's pretty much for you to just take into account and go through and investigate who is educating your children, who's in charge of your school, things of that nature. Questions that you can ask school board members to onboard them for your area. Also, this I've shared this with you as well. If you think DEI is gone, think again. Look for it under all of these different descriptions. And if you have questions about these, you can always email Diane or me. I'm at parentsonthelevel@gmail.com. I came up with this idea to use some bookmarks that have a stop sign on them. And you can even just sign them yourselves that there is a opt out on file for your kid. And if your kid understands what propaganda is, that possibly they could just hold the little stop sign up to the teacher and raise their hand with the stop sign. And it's kind of funny. I did this in a conference recently, and I looked at everybody's faces and I could tell they were like, I can't see a kid being brave enough to do that. That's the power of inclusion. Because, see, they don't want to be excluded. If they held this stop sign up, they're going to get excluded, right? You know, that's the power of inclusion. And that's the reason I would say show this to a parent, see what their response would be. And so you would need to do anti-propaganda training at home to make this work. You'd have to teach them to identify it and to call you immediately, but they don't have cell phones in schools. The kid would have to get permission to go to the office. So I mean, if they think that their kid is another Charlie Kirk that could stand up and hold his own water by standing up with a sign like this, go for it. But you know, for students to turn off the propaganda, that's what STOP stands for on the little bookmark. I think that's that'd be an interesting thought. So now look here. If you visualize your child defending themselves like this, how does it make you feel? That's what I ask parents. Do you think they're capable of doing this? Y'all, I know of parents that are not capable of doing this themselves. They won't stand up against evil. Spiritually, though, is your child able to defend their own faith? That's where I'm asking you. But now your kid could fill out a form and they could say, this is the teacher's name, date, class period. This is the assignment. You know, this is how it was identified, where it came from, the course name, publisher. They could fill out this form and take it home and let their parent check into it and get access to that particular video. And I would highly recommend that you get your kid to do this if you have to keep them in a public school. Remember, I'd gone over this a couple of webinars ago about just the undue burden on parents, all of the things that you would have to know about and keep up with. That's what these two charts are about. So you can take notice on those later on. But in leading the charge, folks, I'm just coming right at it. You need to pray. Every one of us, I mean, I'm sure all of us pray about this if we're involved in standing up for students, but prayer, don't underestimate the power of prayer. Prayer is essential in knowing how to help and lead this in your community. There's other ideas here, and if you would like to get more of a exploration on what I mean by some of these, I'll be glad to talk with you. I mean, I am so willing to talk to folks. Leave me a message, text me your phone number. It's all over parentsonthelevel.com. That is my phone. Call. I'll be glad to help. But these are good ideas to just to stimulate your thinking on how you can make a difference in your area. Also, remember publicschoolexit.com. They have all kinds of ways for you to uh, educate your children. They've got all kind of ideas from micro schools to charter schools to public school exit. They have school curriculum. They have just great ideas and a lot of encouragement for you. So call your legislators, ask for laws to protect our children because inclusion is truly a dangerous intrusion. And that is what we're sensing and feeling. If there's ever been oppression, the oppressor and oppressed, I would say that the average kid in the school is being oppressed without even fully recognizing what's happening. Your sacred family worldview matters, and it is time to protect our children. Again, parentsonthelevel.com. Be sure to check out all of our webinars, documents, and ebooks on our website. All of these resources are free. Please share and help build awareness. And a special thank you to Protect Ohio Children. We just want to give a big thank you and shout out to them. They work very hard on producing these videos and webinars for us. And next month, there's a possibility of us doing this particular webinar series on opt outs, or this may be put off until February because I may have a special guest speaker for next month. And we will get that advertisement out to you. So it'll be that, or it will be learning about the tricks about opting out and what else we can do to get this turned around in our school systems. So, with that, I am wrapping it up, Miss Diane. Thank you for your patience. And thank you, Diane, for all of your hard work on how you get the word out for us, the reminders, everything. We appreciate everything you do, as well as Ohio Value Voters. We really are thankful.
Thank you, Marcia. There's a team effort of people behind the scenes, and we appreciate you so much. Several of the questions that we have that have come in today have to do with, how to socialize this information. So in your presentation on your website, parentsonthelevel.com, are people able to download your presentations and also have access to some of these Betsy Pringle
The videos.
videos? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know how to cut a video yourself off of them, I can certainly help you with that. You can email me, marcia@gmail.com. I mean, I'm sorry, parentsonthelevel@gmail.com, and I will be glad to help you out with that. Don't be afraid to send it in. It might take me a couple of days to get to you, but I will be glad to do that.
And Nisha, are you on Twitter?
I
I know
am.
there's a lot of action on Twitter and there's interest in Twitter. And can you tell people what your handle is on Twitter?
Well, I am primarily under Marcia K22 at what's that? No, it's at Marcia K22. That's how it is. But I do have a Parents on the Level one. It's just was getting so I just get no traction hardly with it. So possibly I will crank it up and start using it more. But anyway, I have that. It's at parents plural parents level at parents level. So be looking there as well. And I do plan on just starting to put this information out more on X as well. So social media can be time consuming and I research a lot. So when you see these things though, you can go to the YouTube Protect Ohio Children, and that is where the YouTube channel for Diane's organization, that is where a lot of these videos are also housed. And you can share a lot from there as well. And if you go in through my website, you can kind of click the box and it'll say watch on YouTube. That's where you'll go. So we both do this hand in hand, okay?
And what we do at the end of this webinar is we take the recording, upload it on the Protect Ohio Children YouTube, and then it
is disseminated out on parents on the level. So we're getting it in a couple places, but we really need our viewers, those watching this and those people on social media to share, share, share and get those out because we spent last year, Marcia, you and I working together with this audience of people that has grown to build a repository that breaks it down by curricula name. And so, people can go back and look at the Castle series or look at Edgenuity or look at Newsella or the different curriculum. And at some point, I'm sure we'll be back to doing some of that as well. But just want to encourage everyone to use that. Don't forget about it. It's still out there. Share it. One of the things, Marcia, you might want to speak to briefly. I think about we just had a recent election where school board candidates ran for office, and we had some disappointments in different areas. We had some victories though too. And really, if a state is red or a district is red, they have a much better chance of having a curriculum in their or a district that doesn't have all of this gender ideology and SEL. But I mean, from my perspective, if your state is red or your district is red, you need to advocate for defunding and eliminating SEL in its entirety. I know
Absolutely.
you've been in Georgia, you're in Florida, we're in Ohio, and all across the nation. We should just flat out tell our legislators and our leaders in our states, in our state governments, get rid of this. Um,
Absolutely.
these these surveys and this SEL Castle experience is devastating and dangerous, and we need to get rid of it in its entirety. Otherwise, get the kids out of these schools. I know you say that all the time too,
Hmm.
Marcia. We've got to get the kids out of these
We
schools.
do. We
It is
do.
just dangerous.
And I'll tell
But
you where we had some victories in Ohio, Stowe Monroe Falls, Ohio, they had some great victories there. And Mike Sheehan is one of their board members. He did a phenomenal job of pushing back, and he used a lot of the information that we've had here. And he had other men in the town. I saw one man. I mean, he took the castle doctrine, he learned it, and he presented. And I mean, it really set a precedent there. They really parents started listening in. They have a Facebook group like nobody's business, and I mean, it's no holds barred. They put anything and everything they think on that. Some of it I'm a little like, woo, but for the most part, I am just so impressed with this community because they're pushing back. And that is what you have to do against Marxism. And some people will do it in a very colorful way, and some people will do it in a more conservative way. But whatever way they're doing it, they're pushing back, and that is what's needed. Do not allow your voice to be silenced by these communist, Marxist, socialists. Don't allow it to happen. Keep speaking out, keep praying, and keep sharing the information so we can help kids across this nation.
amen to that. Marcia, are you able to? The question is, can you send a link to the last NEA presentation? Can you put that right up on your Parents on the Level website?
The oh yeah, yeah, I can do that.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
that's jaw dropping for everyone.
Yeah,
And
both of them. And the thing, what's very interesting is I went to American Family Radio this past month and did this presentation there too, and in a condensed form. And one of the men that was at the American Family Radio said to me, he goes, I did not realize just the effect that on how they have treated this as if it's a church. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. She sounded like a radicalized preacher preaching secular humanism. That's what she was preaching, folks, and that's exactly why you're so taken back. This is an eye opener, and this one has to be shared.
Marcia, we've got a statement here from Linda Harvey, who is a champion in Ohio. and part of our Protect Ohio Children as a leader. She says University of Illinois Chicago School of Education is where Bill Ayers was a professor for so long, just retired. He was the radical who was able to evade conviction for his violent anti-police actions with his wife, Bernadette Dorn, in the 1960s as part of the Weather Underground. He was a mentor of Obama's and he was editor of a book called Queering Elementary Education. There are so many roots,
Yes.
including Castle, that goes
Yes.
back to Chicago, and Linda's
That's right.
pointing
It's
that
the belly
out.
of the beast. It is the belly of the beast. It certainly is. And that's one of the reasons too. I mean, you've got the governor and you've got Jennifer Pritzker, his transgender cousin or whatever it is. Yeah, that's it's so prominent there. So, and it used to be such a godly place because that's where Moody Institute is as well. And so that yeah, there's a lot of ground that needs to be taken back by the Christians. And also, folks, if you want to learn more about what I mentioned about mindfulness in the schools, Linda Harvey has done a lot of studies on that as well. And that's deeply connected with Castle, with Linda Lantieri and the Dalai Lama, all of it. So she's very well astute on that. So look her up on Mission America. Is it .org? MissionAmerica.org. She has a lot of good
Yes,
articles on that as well.
Mission
So,
America. We
yep.
love it. And we do also love the Protect Child Health Coalition that we get so much information about. Sex ed continues to be a portal for all of this insidious gender ideology. As much as we love our president and he's doing a great job to dismantle the Department of Education in the federal government, our local school districts is where the action is that's
Yes,
hurting our kids in our local communities and in our local states. So the fight goes on. We can't give up.
that's right.
I think that covers all the questions for today, Marcia.
Well,
Thank
I
you so
can't
much
thank
for
you
your
guys
hard
enough for
work.
tuning in. Honestly, it encourages us. A lot of people watch it by video because they're at work during the day. But thank you, thank you, thank you. And please share, share, share. And again, Diane, thank you for all you're doing. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless.